Hi, this is Jerome Joseph. I'm excited to have you here with me on this live stream. I should be getting on live stream a lot more often, but it's been packed, it's been busy because it's the start of the year. And in the start of the year, as a consultant, as a speaker, I get called in very often to work with brands on a few things. Number one, I get to call in the brand who has, they have a strategy in place and they want to execute that strategy in the marketplace. But I've also had brands who have no idea what to do. It's 2021. What's going on? What can I do to bring my brand to the next level? So interestingly enough, with what's happened around the world with the challenge of COVID, many brands have approached us over the past few months with this very simple and powerful word. And that word is rebranding. They are looking at rebranding, and of course they call in an expert like myself and my team at the Brand Theater to really help them with their rebranding. So today I'm very excited because today I want to focus and really talk about the art of rebranding. And I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about what are some of the reasons that you need to consider when it comes to rebranding for your business. So let me give you a quick example of a client of mine. So the client of mine, and again, because of confidentially, I'm not going to mention his name, but a client of mine who over the past 10 years were doing extremely well in the manufacturing business. And then what's happened is because there were increasingly a high number of competition that came into the industry. And what this competition has done is that they have positioned themselves a lot better than him. They have positioned themselves extremely well, and he started losing a lot of business. And of course, he was extremely upset. So we went in and we looked at his brand and we said, look, your brand today is not relevant to the target market anymore. Your brand is old-fashioned. Your brand is not keeping up with the times, and as such, we had to take them through on a rebranding exercise. And going through the rebranding exercise was a big eye-opener for this particular client of ours, because we then compared him against the different competitors that he had in the marketplace. And we said, how can you outposition them? How can you, create a brand that stands out in the mind of your customers? So today, with the art of rebranding, I really want to take you through thinking about rebranding. Now, firstly, is rebranding for every single person? No, it's not. You may have a great brand today, and you may have a brand that's winning in the marketplace, that's standing out, and rebranding may not be for you at the moment. But I really want you to think about rebranding for the future, because times change, and we saw very clearly how COVID has disrupted us so much. So with times that are changing, I truly believe it is very crucial for us to start thinking 4 or 5 steps ahead and be prepared for when the time comes. So the art of rebranding is going to cover a few things. But before that, let me get in and introduce myself a bit. For those of you that have not met me, if you're on my Facebook, of course you've met me, but if you're on YouTube and subscriber, you may not know about me. Let me share a little bit about myself. So my name is Jerome Joseph. I've been doing this now for more than 23 years. I've run programs. I consulted with clients in 34 countries. And I've worked with more than 1,000 brands and impacted more than 1 million people all around the world. I've written 8 books on the topic of branding. And in 2022, I was ranked number 2 in the world as a global brand thought leader. So I guess you can say I know what I'm talking about, right? So one of the things that I stress when I work with clients is I'm a practitioner. I do this for a living. I go in every week and I talk to different businesses. I talk to businesses at this level. I talk to businesses, which is the MNCs. I talk to the mid-sized businesses. I talk to the small, medium enterprises, and I talk to the startups. And they all have their own unique challenges. They all have their own unique problems. But I have the experience and the depth of breadth experience working with the range of these businesses. So today, I want to bring you through what we're going to be covering, right? And really talking to you about the reasons why you need to be doing a rebrand. And I'm going to minimize myself so that you can focus on some of the things that I'm going to be sharing about. So let's go through this a little bit more, right? So there are a few reasons why you need to rebrand. Now, of course, I want to put in a little bit of a disclaimer. There are a lot more reasons I could cover, but I don't have the time. So I'm going to focus on 7 key reasons why you need to rebrand. Number 1, it is about when you are in a time when you need to completely reposition your brand. When you go, I don't think I'm standing out in the marketplace enough and I need to stand out a lot more. So that could be one reason. Number 2 is when you may have a negative reputation in the marketplace. Maybe you did something wrong. Maybe your product has failed and you need to probably change your image as a result. Number 3, maybe you want to attract a new audience, a new category. Or maybe your positioning is inconsistent. The messaging that you put out is inconsistent with your target audience and you want to change that. Maybe you have evolved. It's a natural course of evolution for most brands to go through, these changes, and you've evolved and you think that, hey, because I've evolved, I need to rebrand. Maybe you're not as good as competition. Like the story I shared on early on, maybe you're way, way behind, right? And competition has evolved and you need to get better. Or maybe you've been acquired. There is a merger that's happened in your business. And to get your brand out there, you probably need to rebrand that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through all these different reasons together with some examples to get you really thinking about why you need to do rebranding. So let's start with the first one. The first one is going to be when you need to completely reposition your brand. So let me give you some context. Now, for those of you that whose parents use Old Spice, you probably, as I grew up, my dad was the Old Spice guy, man. He was using Old Spice. And then there's, of course, with me, right? I mean, I just felt it was such an old man or an old conservative brand that it just reminded me of my dad and my grandpa, that it didn't make sense for me. It wasn't trendy enough. So Old Spice had a problem. Right? So they needed to reposition their brand in the marketplace. And this is what they did. You see this guy down here? They got this NFL player called, let me get his name correct, Isaiah Mustafa. Right? They called him the Old Spice guy. Right? And if you ever Google and you look at commercials, you realize that it's completely evolved as a brand. I mean, it's become modern, it's become trendy, it's become attractive, it's become cool. It's really all the qualities that Old Spice wants to give you when you think about choosing a deodorant, right? There's a lot of humor in the brand as well. And again, it's really evolved. And Old Spice did a really good job in moving from a traditional grandpa type of brand and repositioning through the art of rebranding, repositioning themselves into a modern, trendy, fun brand for a new audience segment. So that's one example of why you need rebrand, an example of a case study that you can look at. Let's look at another one. So this is the second reason why you need to rebrand, is if you have a negative reputation. So my wife loves Burberry, and she loves Burberry. I gotta say I'm not a big fan, but it's cool, man. I mean, someone gave me a Burberry scarf, and I love it. I still have that scarf. It's such a cool, trendy scarf. But let me tell you a little bit about Burberry. Burberry was founded in England more than 150 years ago. That's a long time. But what's happened in that time is that they were looked at as being very frumpy. They were looked at as being, kind of like gangwear. In fact, it was very interesting that there was a story about how they were famously, if someone's wearing a Burberry, you were kind of banned going into pubs in England. Right? So I don't know how true this story is, but it was just a story about how Burberry was associated with gangwear. So now new leadership came in and they looked and they said, hey, we have a bad negative reputation and we need to change. And this is what Burberry did. Burberry went out there and they went through this entire transformation, and they brought in high profile celebrities of the brand. Kate Moss, for example, Emma Watson of Harry Potter fame, all part of that new trendy celebrities. So case to point, right? Burberry sales went up 27% to $747 million. Wow, pretty good. And that's in 2012. So it's a great example of how, when you have a negative reputation, you can look at really changing your brand. Of course, in today's day and age, I mean, brands suffer from controversies all the time. So if you have a brand and if something controversial has happened, I'll give you a quick example of a consulting client that we worked with a couple of years ago. This consulting client ended up being in the news for certain, I'm not going to tell you what reasons they were, but they ended up being in the news. And everyone started to come to associate him and the company they was part of. So when he came to us, we said, you had to rebrand, because the association of negativity that went with his brand was bad. And as such, they had a new name change. They completely repositioned themselves. In fact, this owner was kind of removed from the equation, from the brand perspective. So that's something that you have to consider if you have a negative reputation for your brand. So let's go to the next one. The next one is when you want to attract a new audience. So rebranding really helps in this particular scenario. So when you want to attract a new audience, let's take McDonald's, right? So what's very interesting? I love McDonald's and I grew up eating McDonald's. It's kind of the reasons why I put on so much weight. Because, there's this, as I grew up, oh my goodness, the Big Mac, I could have like 3 Big Macs a day when I was hungry. And the Coca-Cola and the French fries. And as such, a lot of people were not very upset were kind of upset with McDonald's. As such, this is where Don Thompson, the chief executive of McDonald's, kind of stepped in and says, let's evolve, right? So let's rebrand, because there, of course we have that category where people are going to love their Big Macs and so on, but let's go into healthy food. Let's go into a place where people can have a salad, they can have a nice wrap, which is a lot more healthier. So this was the rebranding that they took, and it's a shift, because there was a shift, of course, in the marketplace for healthy lifestyles. And so to address that, they rebranded to bring in this whole healthier lifestyle, to the healthier food that they were going at. So again, think about your brand. What if you need to evolve and you want to attract a new audience that you feel may bring you more income, bring you more revenue? So this is where rebranding could play a very crucial role for you. Let's look at the next one. So the next one is around your messaging and positioning. So for me, again, I see this is very common, by the way, in SMEs. Their positioning is, and what they say, what they do, how they look is so inconsistent that they struggle for customers to connect with them because of this inconsistency with positioning. And we always go in and we say, hey, look, your message and how you're positioned and how you are depicted from a brand perspective and how your employees deliver the brand are all inconsistent. And that's where rebranding comes in, for us to get everybody on the same page. So let's give you an example. One example is Uber. Now, Uber's former CEO, let me make sure I get his name, Travis Kalanick. So he built a very successful empire, but there was a very, if you read and you believe what's written, there's a lot of things around the idea of a toxic culture that Uber had, right? So it really became poison, and it tarnished the brand. So the old Uber logo really represented, and you see the upper caps, right, represented this sense of hostility, this masculinity, that this toxicness. And so to rebrand, they had to kind of move towards being a business that was less toxic. So the new CEO is Dara Shashi. I'm not doing justice to pronouncing the name, right? So he said, look, let's bring the company in a fresh start, right? So let's start with new leaders, a great company culture, and let's improvements to our business and our infrastructure. So this is what they did. And if you notice the logo, if you see it, the upper caps then move into smaller caps. And then there's this whole shift, right, where there you see a sense of mobility, accessibility, friendliness that were not found in the previous iterations of Uber. So I thought this is really very powerful, really, really very good. So let's look at the next one. So let's talk about when you have evolved as the business. So again, we meet many customers, many clients who go through this evolution. I remember a client of ours, probably about 15 years ago. They started with In fact, the guy started with this, what was a one-man show, and they were selling milk products. And today they've kind of expanded, and they probably have 40 people under them, and a huge company, which they used to have a revenue of 100K a year. They're now in your 20, 30 millions a year. So there's a big evolution. And with the evolution, there is a need to rebrand, to stay relevant, to stay connected, because your market size is growing. A good example of this is Shell. So look at the current Shell logo, and you look at the logo that has come, right? You see that there's been a dramatic shift in how Shell positions itself. And also, if you realize, Shell does a lot on this idea of green, sustainable energy. Now, again, I have a little bit of a question mark on how effective they are in that, but that's the shift, right? Because of what's happening in the marketplace with climate change and so on. The other one I would say has to be Apple. I mean, look at Apple. I mean, the Steve Jobs story will be perfect, right? How they started in a garage in someone's house, and how it's evolved. So again, if you look at the evolution of Apple and the products that it has, right, you would really see the rebranding that's put into place. In fact, the Apple logo and is really recognized as one of the most iconic brand symbols in the world today. So if you are a business, and if you evolve from a one-person startup to a 20-man company, you've grown your market size, then rebranding is something that you will need to consider. All right, let's look at the next one. The next one is, if you're not as good as the competition. Again, this is a common reason why we encourage our clients to rebrand, because we go in them and we look at them, and we realize that when we do a competitor's audit, that they're way, way behind. They may have been good in the past, but guess what? Competition has taken over. And for that, for them to fight, they really need to look at investing in a rebranding strategy to get them to compete and win in their marketplace. UPS is a really good example, because look, they had to compete against its biggest rival, FedEx. So FedEx was really, blowing competition away. And UPS had to really, up its game. And in fact, they changed their logo, and they had a new slogan, which is, "What can Brown do for you?" So again, you see a lot of competition. You see a lot of brands always evolving themselves to ensure that they are repositioning themselves to ensure that they are better than competition. Now, I want you to kind of think about it from a very simple image, right? You're in a supermarket shelf. You look up and you see all these different soft drinks, and you reach out, and assuming you don't know what these brands are. So the first thing you will look at is, what's the best looking packaging? And that's what you want to pick up. The second thing you will look at is, what is the packaging? What is the message that this brand is telling me? So of course, if you know the brands, there's a high chance if you're looking at a soft drink, you're probably picking up a Coca-Cola, or you're picking a Pepsi, or a 7-Up, or a Sprite, brands that have top of mind awareness. But if all things remain equal, then rebranding can help you stand out in the marketplace by ensuring that you compete more aggressively with your competition. Let's look at our final one, which is mergers and acquisitions. I mean, I do a lot of it. So what happens is that we get hired by, when organizations that said, "Hey, we're gonna come together, we're gonna merge, or we're gonna acquire this business and bring." What do? Should we follow their brand? Should we follow our brand? What should we do? Well, in any case, if you are going through a merger and acquisition, there is a branding responsibility that you have. So for example, if you are company A has just acquired company B, then it's very important that company A, who's like the giant, and it's like this company B is a smaller business, that you invest in educating the people in company B to what your brand is all about, so that there's this consistency of how the brand goes out there. In many cases, it's not the case. And I'll give you a good example, right? This is Whole Foods and Amazon. 2018 saw Amazon acquire Whole Foods. And when I first saw this, I thought, wow, what a great strategy. All right. But then, as the more I started reading about this, the more interesting it became. So interesting enough, Whole Food employees were reportedly crying on the job and accusing Amazon of turning them into robots. Wow. Now, think about it, right? I mean, it was part of the reason is the different cultures at play. Amazon, of course, is a fast, easy, efficient, strict internal culture, whereas Whole Foods is all about the personal touch, right? Giving employees a level of autonomy. So you realize that when Amazon, which is a little bit more regimented, came in and took on a little bit more empowered workforce, there is this problem of acquisition. So if you are thinking of a rebranding exercise when it comes to your merger acquisition, one of the things that I urge you to do is think about how you can align people to the brand, because that's, rebranding does that. Rebranding also helps you look at how can I align, how can I rebrand the people in company B, for example? Is there a need to do it in the first place? And if there's a need to do it, how can I ensure that B understands A? And that's key. So good. We've gone through a lot of things and 7 reasons. I hope that's really inspired you to start thinking about some of these examples and how it would apply to your own business. But the question I often get is, Jerome, what can we do? What can we do to rebrand? And I'm going to just go through this very quickly for all of you to start considering. Now, if you're a business, and you could be a solopreneur, you could be a small business, medium business, there are many ways that you could look at rebranding. Now, in the interest of time, I'm going to share 5 very quick ways for you to start thinking about. Let's start with number 1. One of the things that you can do is you can reestablish your brand's audience and marketplace. How can you do that? For example, you could look at getting a new identity out there. You could get a stronger messaging out there. You could also remind the audience why you exist and why you're there to serve them. So that's one way to think about it. Number 2, you could rename your company. And again, renaming is something which I've been very careful about. So when clients ask me, should I rename? It's only when your older company's name has lost its equity. So for example, if you had a negative reputation, as you saw in the earlier case, yep, it may make sense to rename. Or if you want to capture a bigger marketplace and you think you need a new name that's more relevant to that bigger marketplace. Number 3, you could look at what you stand for as a brand. You maybe need to redefine that. 4, you could be a very identity. So you could look at visual and verbal elements of your brand and say, look, I need to change this, right? I need to change my logo. I need to change my name cards, my brochures. So that's very tangible. Of course, you can see the visual elements and of course the copy that has changed. And a lot of companies typically think that's rebranding. It's not only that, by the way, just add in a quick disclaimer, but it's a component of rebranding where you change your visual elements and in verbal. Or you could also look at changing your positioning in the marketplace or your messaging in the marketplace, right? You could move into, connecting to a bigger audience. So these are some of the things that you can do to rebrand. So look, I hope I've given you a lot of great information that you can start to use already in your business. I do this very often, right? I mean, I go into organizations and I help them to really drive this, right? I help them to really drive how they can look at rebranding and how they can work on building their brand. I would love for you to reach out to me if you have questions. So please email me at jerome@jeromejoseph.com, and I'm happy to provide you with answers to some of your questions. You could also look at the different websites. So if you are looking at brand consulting, it's www.thebrandtheater.com. Please feel free to go in and watch, to see what we do and how we can help you from a consulting perspective. If you're an organization that's looking at training, you need a strategy session with me, I would love to come in and spend 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, a month with you and really sitting down and deep diving and helping you craft your brand strategy. You could be an organization, you could be an entrepreneur. I'm happy to help you with both. So I look forward to connecting with all of you. Feel free to reach out to me. The art of rebranding is not an easy thing, but I hope that I've given you ideas that you can start to think about. If there is a need to rebrand today, for my business, my brand, my product, my service. So my name is Jerome Joseph, and I wish you success in building your world-class brand. Take care.